There's a moment near the end of this story, 30 seconds, maybe 40, when every federal officer in Terminal 4 at Los Angeles International Airport stopped moving. Not because they were ordered to, because they understood for the first time what they were actually watching. That moment wouldn't be spoken about publicly for 11 years. The man at the center of it never gave an interview. He didn't have to. By then, the story had already spread the way things spread in gyms, in judos, in locker rooms, quietly, person to person, always with the same ending, always with the same detail that nobody could explain at first, and everybody understood the second they heard it. This is how the legend comes down. Los Angeles, October 1986. The checkpoint at Terminal 4 is the kind of place designed to make everyone feel equally small. Fluorescent light, no windows, linoleum that hasn't changed since 1971. There were 4 lanes, 12 officers on rotation, in a supervisory desk behind a half-wall of frosted plexiglass where a man named Dennis Farr has been working the morning shift for going on 9 years. Farr will be a witness to all of it. At 11:14 in the morning, Chuck Norris arrives. He comes in the way he always comes in, which is to say, the way a man comes in when he has spent the better part of a decade being told that every room belongs to him. He has just finished principal photography on the 4th installment of a franchise that has earned more than $60 million domestic. He is 46 years old, 7th-degree black belt, holder of a world middleweight title in Tang Soo Do that he has never formally relinquished. He has 4 films in the top 50 grossing action releases of the decade. He is wearing a canvas jacket and carrying a duffel bag, and he walks straight to the front of the lane. Not the short lane, the front. He steps around a family of 5 from Phoenix who have been waiting 11 minutes. He sets his bag on the belt. He looks at the officer manning the station, a young man, maybe 23, and says nothing, because nothing needs to be said. The young officer looks at the bag. Then he looks at the man. Then he does what people have been doing in front of Chuck Norris for approximately 15 years. He steps aside. The threshold is a specific place. Every martial artist learns about it differently, and most of them learn about it too late. It is not a philosophical concept. It is geometry. It is the distance at which a body in motion cannot be stopped by the body it is moving toward. The point of no return, measured in feet, that changes depending on speed, mass, and the specific mechanics of whoever is approaching. Cross it, and the fight is already half over. Control it, and there is no fight at all. Ray Varga understood the threshold the way other men understood their own handwriting. It wasn't something he thought about. It was something he occupied. He was 38 years old in October 1986, and he weighed 281 pounds on the scale in the locker room that morning, same as he had weighed more or less every morning for the past 4 years. He had spent 11 years as a freestyle wrestler, first at Cal State Fullerton, then for 6 years on the circuit in ways that do not appear in any official record. He had done 3 years with a federal contractor that also does not appear in any record. And for the past 2 years, he had been assigned to LAX as a plainclothes air marshal, which meant he wore a sport coat that did not fit across the shoulders and stood near the checkpoint, looking like a man waiting for someone who was never going to arrive. He was very good at looking like that. He was standing approximately 40 feet away when Chuck Norris walked to the front of the lane. He watched the young officer step back. He waited. Here is what Dennis Farr remembers about the next 60 seconds. He remembers Varga not moving. He remembers thinking briefly that Varga had not noticed, that he was looking somewhere else, that the whole thing would pass the way 100 small frictions passed every day at every airport in the country, absorbed and forgotten before anyone had to decide anything. Then, Varga moved. He didn't hurry. That is the thing Farr always emphasizes when he tells this story, even now, even 30-something years over coffee in a diner in Burbank where he has lived since 1994. He did not hurry. He walked from the far side of the checkpoint, the way you walk when you already know how it ends, and he stopped at a very specific point, not at the belt, not beside the young officer, but 3 feet short of the belt, which put him at an angle to the lane and to the man standing at the front of it. 3 feet short. Farr didn't understand why at the time. He does now. Varga looked at Chuck Norris. He said, "Sir, end of the line is back there." That was it. 7 words, delivered in the register of a man explaining the location of the restroom. What Chuck Norris did next is the part the story always slows down for. He looked at Varga, really looked, the way you look when you are recalibrating, not at the badge, not at the jacket, but at the body, the stance, the 3 feet of space the man had chosen, and why. In every version of this story, there is a pause here. Not long, 4 seconds, maybe 5. Then Chuck Norris smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who has just realized something is not what he assumed and who has not yet decided what to do about that. He said, "Do you know who I am?" Varga said, "Yes, sir." He didn't say anything else. This is the part where every other man on that checkpoint stopped doing what he was doing. Not because there was a scene, because there wasn't. Because Chuck Norris had asked the question that ended every conversation like this, the question that worked reliably, because the answer was always yes, and the yes always meant, "So step aside." And the man, standing 3 feet from the conveyor belt, had answered it correctly and completely, and then had simply continued to exist in that specific piece of space, not threatening, not yielding, not explaining himself. Just there. Dennis Farr put down his coffee. The young officer at the belt, whose name was Kevin Andrade and who would go on to work federal security for another 22 years, took 1 step back without being aware he was doing it. 2 lanes over, a supervisor named Patricia Wills stopped mid-sentence in a conversation about the shift schedule and turned to look. They were all, in their own way, doing the math. The threshold is not about size. Varga knew this better than most because he had spent 11 years competing against men who were sometimes larger and occasionally faster, and he learned the same lesson every serious wrestler learns eventually. The geometry doesn't care about reputation. It cares about position. Control the space between 2 bodies, not the space in front of you, not the space behind, but the specific contested zone where intention becomes action, and you have already decided the outcome before either body moves. Chuck Norris was standing at the edge of Varga's threshold, not inside it, at the edge. That was the choice Varga had made when he stopped 3 feet from the belt. He had not crowded the man. He had not tried to intimidate. He had simply placed himself at the exact distance where his own mass and training gave him a geometric advantage that no amount of fame or credential could overwrite. And then he had stayed there, still, offering the other man every opportunity to understand what that meant. This is what the officers on that checkpoint were watching. Most of them didn't have a name for it. They could feel it, though. Chuck Norris picked up his bag. He did not do it quickly. He took his time, and this matters because what he was doing in that moment was not capitulating and not escalating and not performing. He was buying himself 4 seconds to arrive at a decision that nobody in that terminal could have predicted. He walked to the end of the line. He stood behind the family from Phoenix. He waited. Dennis Farr has been asked over the years what he made of that. He always says the same thing. He says, "That was the tell. That's when I knew what kind of man Chuck Norris actually was." Not because he backed down. Plenty of men backed down. They backed down angry, humiliated, already composing the story they'll tell about how it wasn't worth it. Norris backed down the way you back down when you've just seen something you recognize, when the man in front of you has shown you something real, and you are old enough and serious enough to know what it is and to respect it. The threshold. He had found the edge of it, and he had understood where he was. Kevin Andrade processed the boarding pass. Varga returned to his position near the far wall. The terminal went back to being a terminal. Fluorescent lights, linoleum, the low-grade noise of 600 people who all need to be somewhere else. Patricia Wills went back to the schedule. Dennis Farr picked up his coffee. Nobody said anything. That is what Farr remembers most clearly even now. The absence of commentary. No one debriefed it. No one made a joke about it in the break room at noon. Whatever had happened in a register that was too precise for that, and they all seemed to understand, without discussing it, that cheapening it with words would cost them something. So they let it be. The story surfaces the way these stories always surface, slowly in the margins. A wrestling coach in the San Fernando Valley hears it from a man who trained with Varga in 1988. A stunt coordinator tells a version of it on set in 1991. By 1993, it has reached 2 or 3 dojos in the valley, and one gym in Phoenix where the family from the airport trains, though the father of that family will maintain for the rest of his life that he didn't actually see most of it because his youngest daughter had taken her shoes off, and he was dealing with that. The detail everyone remembers: 3 feet short of the belt. Nobody who hears it the first time understands why that's the important part. Everybody who hears it the second time does. Ray Varga left LAX in early 1989. He moved to Albuquerque, where he spent 4 years running a security consultancy out of a rented office above a dry cleaner on 4th Street. He did not teach martial arts. He did not give seminars. He did not have a website because it was 1989 and that was not yet a thing a person could have, and when it became a thing, he still didn't. In 1997, a journalist working on a profile of federal air marshal programs sent him a written inquiry about the incident. Varga wrote back. His response was 4 sentences. 3 of them concerned the journalist's factual errors about the air marshal program, which were significant. The 4th sentence was, "The gentleman in question conducted himself with considerable dignity, which I respected then and respect now." The journalist printed all 4 sentences. The 4th one was the only one anyone remembered. What happened after, the version that Farr tells and that 3 other witnesses independently corroborate, is this. Chuck Norris made his flight. Approximately 6 weeks later, he returned to Terminal 4. Not for a flight. He went to the checkpoint desk and asked for the officer who had been working Lane 2 on the morning of October 14th. He was told that officer was not in that day. He left a card. The card reached Varga through channels that took 2 weeks. Whether Varga called the number on it and what was said if he did is not known. Dennis doesn't know, Andrade doesn't know, Patricia Wills doesn't know. What is known is that 6 months later, in the spring of 1987, Chuck Norris quietly expanded the curriculum at his Chun Kuk Do schools to include a module on positional control derived from wrestling and judo. Not striking, not kicking, not the techniques that had made him famous, but the geometry of the threshold, the specific mathematics of contested space between 2 bodies, the specific mathematics of contested space between 2 bodies. The outcome is already written before anyone moves. And you stand in it, quietly, and you wait for the other person to do the math. Most people never find it. The ones who do don't talk about it much. They don't need to.